Hello everyone, welcome back. This is going to be part 14 of my PetGo2 breakdown series. Thanks for following along. I can't find any of my videos on YouTube anymore, so even with the search bar, so thanks for subscribing. If you can share these or whatever, I think this is important to kind of keep new ideas coming. Thanks for sharing in the comments, and this one's going to be a little different. I think that iPetGo2 gives us time frames for all the eclipses from 2023 out to 2031 when it ends. So I'm going to go through this breakdown here and try and find all the eclipses in the movie from 2023 after she drops the apple out to 2031. So let's get into it. You're going to have to look at my other videos first to understand the years and the breakdowns and everything. This one's very much trying to find all the eclipses in the movie. So I'm going to be using print screens. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. So 2023, we have 2 solar, 2 lunar. I think the classroom scene, though, starts on September 4th, right when Jupiter goes into retrograde. So we can ignore the first 2, okay? Or they'd probably be in the classroom scene, which actually they kind of are. Actually, I might cover that. I didn't even look at that. Her sitting there illuminated with the ring eclipse, I think that could even be the solar eclipse here at the start of 2023. Very interesting. Okay, so I didn't look at the first 2, but October 14th is when, after she drops the apple, we should be seeing October 14th eclipse and the October 28th lunar. So in 2023, the first one is the October 14th. So as she drops the apple, it gets dark. We see the ring around Lily, which I think represents October 14th eclipse. And we see the classroom door at the back that gets partially red. The rest of it is in shadow, which would represent the lunar eclipse October 28th. Then we move into 2024, 5 eclipses. The first one is a lunar eclipse. So it's a penumbral with this distinctive white band, okay, across the top. I think we see Osama here in shadow, and his distinctive white hat is this little part of the moon. The next is the solar eclipse. So know that these happen within 2 weeks of each other, typically, right, on the full moon and then the new moon. So in iPetGo2, look for these 2 eclipses that are paired together almost in the exact same scene or time frame. So we see this as the eclipse of April 8th. Moving on, we have the 3rd lunar eclipse, which is this one. The 3rd eclipse, which is a lunar one, so which has a bit of red. So if we look at the scene with the Statue of Liberty, we have this little red up in the top right. Everything else is in shadow except for this little piece of red. I think this shows us this lunar eclipse, followed immediately by the Star of David being eclipsed by the Statue of Liberty, which I think is going to show us this, the October 2nd solar eclipse. The 5th one is an almost eclipse, so it won't be shown in the movie, so we don't have to look for that one. Moving into 2025, on March 13th, we have a red lunar eclipse. As we transition into 2025, we have the human spirit's head all in red, and then the television comes through its like kind of pineal gland, okay? And so I think the red part is showing us the red moon, and then the head kind of breaks the eclipse by coming in, right? Then we see the television character, and he has this distinctive earring, which looks way too distinctive for, you know, the partial lunar eclipse, which is on March 29th. Just a little band of gold, and then the rest in black or covered. Moving into 2025's 3rd one, we have a lunar eclipse, blood red moon. I can't find this one, guys. I don't know if it's on the bombers or something. I think it's got to be in this scene just before the mosque collapses, as the 4th eclipse of 2025, I think, is shown here on September 21st as the Islamic star illuminates before it collapses into the mosque. So please help if you can find this one. It should be somewhere in this scene. I've tried looking in the background, etc. I can't seem to find it. Moving into 2026, we have 4 eclipses. The first one is the solar eclipse on February 17th, which is the ring around the woman's head. Second, we move in and see the robot child with the blood red eyes, okay, that seem to flash in and out. So I think that's the March 2nd, 3rd eclipse of 2026. The third is the ring eclipse on August 12th. After we have the tank scene, we have the skeleton show his ring, which flashes. So I think that this is signifying the August 12th one. And I think this is a very cool way of showing the partial lunar eclipse, which is almost all in blood, except for the top part. So just after we see his ring, we see the skeleton, and he has this distinctive red cape, which doesn't really make sense to me, except now that the red cape is representing this red part of the moon, and only the top part of his head sticks out, which is showing the partial lunar eclipse. Moving into 2027 in the cutscene, so the first solar eclipse in 2027 is on February 6th, which is before the Chinese New Year. So we'd expect to see this eclipse in the cutscene, and we do. They pan to the top of the human spirit's head, and we can see his ring of thorns, crown of thorns light up. So this is the solar eclipse of February 6th. Then we move into the lunar eclipse, which has to be in the next iPet Go 2 scene because it falls after the Chinese New Year. So I think it's the penumbral eclipse is shown by this child's head being illuminated from the back by the television. So the child only looks up twice in this entire scene. He looks up at the start, he's illuminated, so I think this is the first lunar eclipse. Then he lowers his head, and the television comes in, and we see this strange scene with his tooth being really illuminated. And I think that this is showing us the third eclipse in 2027. Okay, this one on July 18th is an almost, so it won't be shown. But on August 2nd, we have a ring eclipse, which I think is shown by his mouth and the tooth showing the ring eclipse. The fourth one is the penumbral eclipse on August 16th, so immediately after he moves away, the child lifts his head again. It's illuminated from the back, showing this August 16th one. Then we move into 2028. There's 5 eclipses. The first one is a lunar eclipse, partial. I think that this is shown in the cutscene by this hanging bulb, okay, that's partially lit up. Then immediately after this, we have our January 26th eclipse, which is shown again in the cutscene because it's still before the Chinese New Year, shown by the human spirit's head being eclipsed by the bulb to create the lunar eclipse, our solar eclipse on January 26th. Moving into 2028, this one I think I found on the floor, so July 6th through 7, we have this little circle that the dancer kind of walks over. Half of it's almost lit up in red, part of it is lit up in shadow. So I think this is the July 6th, 2028 eclipse. For this one, for the fourth eclipse is July 22nd. Happens right after it. We see Shiva with this headrest. Okay. And we see this little dot on her head that looks like an eclipse anyways, but I think that this Shiva character puts her hands over her chest to cover the star, and her headrest representing this gold ring to signify this solar eclipse of July 22nd. The fifth one is a lunar eclipse, which I think is shown by Shiva as after this scene, after this movement, she sticks out her tongue, which is clearly a blood tongue, looks red, to signify the December 30th eclipse of 2028. Moving into 2029, we have 5 eclipses. The first one's solar on January 14th. So again, should be seen in the cutscene, which we do. The Anubis boat moves by, which eclipses the human spirit figure, not fully, but partially, which we can see here on January 14th. Then we move into June 12th eclipse, which has to be in the next movie scene. So I think the lighthouse is clearly showing us this eclipse. As it moves around, I can almost stop it to show an eclipse or a partial eclipse. Okay, I think it's clearly showing us this one of June 12th, because immediately after this, we have this distinctive scene of the old woman with the blood spot, which is showing us the June 25th lunar eclipse. After this, we move into July 11th. So I think that the Anubis boat, as it leaves this mountain, it's partially, like, we can see this hole here is not a full hole. Okay, it seems partially eclipsed. It's July 11th. And the final one, I think, is on December 5th. We have a partial solar eclipse, where as the dancer is finishing his movements in the scene, he performs these moves that cover the star on his chest. Okay, this one might be better found, I'm not sure, but I know, I'm almost confident that it's going to be in this scene with the dancer just before it moves into the next transition scene. So then we move into 2030. We have 4 eclipses. The first one is a solar on June 1st, which I think is shown by the child's head, the dancing child, spinning child, sorry, with the white robe. So I think that his head would represent the solar eclipse, with the white robe representing the ring. Okay. The second is a lunar eclipse on June 15th. So this is what I mean, is they have to follow one after another. So we see this and then immediately moves up into the moon to eclipse the moon. And I think that he's eclipsing it, like this is the June 15th one. So it's a partial red. So just so happens that he has this waistband that's red, that's going to cover a part of the moon. And I think we even have further confirmation of this, as in the next scene, the moon is partially eclipsed in the water. Okay. I'm going to come back to this in the next slide. So that's the June 15th one. So the next one is November 25th solar eclipse, which I think is shown by the eyes of this creature as we transition to see the Anubis boat coming out of the mountain. His eyes are too distinguished to not be this final solar eclipse here. That shining is what's depicted as these solar eclipses, the ring eclipses. This 4th lunar eclipse, this penumbral one, I think is tough. I'm not sure if it's shown by the exit out of the dark mountain here, partially in shadow and then partially illuminated. I have to take a look again at this one. And it's just strange that these whirling dervish event kind of happens around December 10th. Just want to come back to this because of the time frame where he's whirling around this moon here. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to come back to that. I'll leave that for another video. So in 2023, I think the first lunar eclipse on May 6th, okay, if we stop the scene here, we see this distinctive C in the clouds, which is very strange, okay, or this thing laying half in the ground, in the water. So I'm wondering if those are the solar or lunar eclipses, or the lunar eclipse on May 6th. This one becomes very tough, guys. I think the rest of the movie has kind of makes sense, except for this scene where everything seems to be happening all at once. So the next one is a solar eclipse on May 21st. There's only 2 rings that leave the sun here, like that actually are emitted from the sun. And I think those represent the 2 solar eclipses in 2031. So the first one comes off, and I think that represents May 21st. Then this 3rd eclipse on June 5th, this ring seems to eclipse this little object above the tail of Scorpio. I went into planetarium software and found that on that date, the eclipse does seem to happen with Scorpio in the background. Okay, I'm going to run out of time here. So the 4th one is the solar eclipse, which comes off as the 2nd ring off the moon, and the 5th sorry, that's the 5th solar eclipse that comes off the moon. Thank you.